Jocelyn will be coming up now again to speak on dewormers in sheep and goats, and I'll get the presentation.
So over the next few minutes, I'm going to talk about dewormers for sheep and goats. And the things I'm going to go over are the drug classes that are available in Canada, things we have to think about with regards to withdrawal times, dosages that we use, precautions, how should we be giving these drugs, and then a little bit on what are the actual products and how are they effective against the different parasites. So to start with, there are 4 classes of drugs available worldwide. And what I mean by a class is that all the drugs that are in the like one class, they all kill the parasite in the same way. So we have 4 different classes, so they all 4 act on parasites in different ways. So the first drug class are macrocyclic lactones. So here you have our ivermectin, our moxidectin, our aprinomectin, and our doramectin. These are available in Canada. We have the benzimidazoles, and here we have fenbendazole, and we have albendazole. And again, these products are available in Canada. Not necessarily for sheep and goats, I'll get to that. Then we have I always have a hard time saying this one, the imidazothiazoles, that's how I pronounce it at least, and it's levamisole. And it's off the market now, went off the market in, I guess, 2005, but it can still be compounded by a pharmacy, and I'll talk a little bit more about that too. And then we have the aminoacetonitrile derivatives, and this is the first new class of dewormer in 25 years. It's currently available in the UK, Australia, and New Zealand, but whether or not it will become available in Canada, or in North America, even just North America, that's anyone's guess. So for approved dewormers in Canada, we have 1, and it's in sheep. Okay, we have the Ivermectin Drench and the injectable. There's no dewormer antibiotic approved for goats. So besides Ivermectin Drench and injectable for sheep, everything else is extra label. So when talking about extra label, we have to go through this, but you still have the option that veterinarians can prescribe extra label drugs licensed in other livestock species. So for example, in cattle, they can recommend a different route or a different dose. But again, by having this is with a valid vet-client-patient relationship. And what that means is that as a vet and with a valid VCPR, we shorten it to, that means that we assume responsibility that the drug is going to work so that it's effective, that the drug is, or the dewormer in this case, is effective, or that there's no animal safety issues. Again, there's no human safety issues, and that we can provide appropriate withdrawal time. So we take responsibility. How the tests we have available here in Canada, what our levels are that we will allow, and so we can get withdrawal times for products, not just dewormers, but antibiotics too. So if any of the vets here would like to have that chart, I have some available for them. So withdrawal times. Are meat and milk withdrawal times for sheep and goats the same as for cattle? Is that a no?
Definitely not.
Okay, that's good, because the answer is no. So drug withdrawal times are based on the maximum residue limit. Okay, so this is the allowable limit that the Canadian government will allow a product to contain. So that product would be meat or milk. So they base it also on scientific studies and what the testing we can do. So essentially, if there's no maximum residue limit, there's no MRL for a product or for a species. So everything's extra label in goats. So there aren't any MRLs for that. So there's no, like a small concentration in the muscle or milk that is allowed for cattle. There's nothing in goats or sheep. So essentially, any residue that's detected is a violation. So because the MRL is 0 as opposed to 40, let's say for cattle. So again, what that means is that sheep and goat withdrawal times are much longer than cattle withdrawal times. So, dosages for sheep versus goats. Dosages for sheep are the same as the dosages for cattle. Okay? Goats have to be dosed differently, and that's because they metabolize drugs at a higher rate, so that in order to reach that therapeutic level where they kill the worms, we need to increase the dose. And usually it's 1.5 to 2 times the sheep or cattle dose. A little bit again on dosages. More is not always better. So I have people say, well, if I have to give 5 mils of a product, why don't I just give 10 and I'll make sure that everything is cleared out. The problem with that is that you have too much drug left at a subtherapeutic level. So it's below you're essentially underdosing for a longer period of time. It might go up high for a bit, but then it goes below the level for a longer period of time, so you're underdosing. And what this can do is lead to the selection for genetic or for anthelmintic resistance. Also, all the different drugs that we have available to us, don't assume that if you use 5 mils of Ivermectin that you're going to use 5 mils of fenbendazole, okay? So the dose, how you do it, it depends on the weight of the animal, the concentration of the drug, and also what the dose you're supposed to give. So usually that's fairly clear on the label, but then again, if you're dealing with goats, you have to multiply it by 1.5 to 2 times. And I'm going to go over which drugs do, which concentration, or sorry, which dose you need for goats versus sheep. Again, talk to your herd or flock vet about what options are best suited for your particular farm. Because even though you and your neighbor are right next door to one another, your management, your animals can be very, very different. So you need to make sure that you don't think what's good for them is going to be good for me. How should we give these anthelmintics or dewormers? You should not use a pour-on product as a pour-on for sheep and goats. Why? That's because it's not as well absorbed. So what you do is you end up underdosing these animals. Okay? Underdosing, you either get survival of just regular parasites or you get survival of the resistant parasites. You also shouldn't use pour-on products as drenches in sheep and goats. Let's face it, I think we all admit as vets, we've all tried this because we have such a limited amount of product available to us. But now there's more research, and when we talk to our international colleagues, they have minor heart attacks when we tell them what we've all tried. And again, the issue here is with a pour-on using it as a drench, because it's made differently to absorb through skin versus what you're actually ingesting, that can be very different. So we can't assume that it's being absorbed, that it's working, and that it ever reaches those therapeutic levels. And we have, at this point, no idea of withdrawal times. And let me tell you, I'm sure that G-Ferret, when I send my messages to Saskatoon, they hate me because I give all the wild and wonderful combinations that people have asked for. I'm sure I am blackballed there, but they still respond when I do it. It takes them a while. So, we also shouldn't use injectable products as drenches for the exact same reason. We don't know how it's absorbed, how effective it is, does it reach those therapeutic levels, and again, we don't know what the withdrawal times are. They won't give me withdrawal times. Also, we don't recommend using injectable products in sheep and goats, and again, it's because of that long residual activity below the therapeutic level. Again, it can lead to, against the survival of those partially resistant parasites. So, people are going to say, but we have Moxidectin, and it's only available sub-Q. What should we do? So in most operations, Moxidectin injectable should not be your first drug of choice. I always say that this is our big gun. This is our one big drug that we have that is very powerful, that if we have if we start using this inappropriately, that we can get resistance to this very, very quickly. And then we're kind of stuck in between a rock and a hard place.
Is that Moxidectin?
Yes, the question was Moxidectin, Moxidectin. And actually I'm going to hold up, I'll do that when I talk about each product. I'll make sure I say their trade name so that everybody understands. And the other issue with Moxidectin is it very much likes to stay in fat for a long period of time. So even though it does maintain those therapeutic levels for a long period of time, this drug has very, very long withdrawal period. And in the US, they just came out with a recommendation that they are no longer recommending the use of Moxidectin sub-Q. Fortunately for them, unfortunately for us, they have like a Moxidectin or a Moxidectin Drench available to them. But the withdrawal period is months long. Like we're talking 4 to 6 months. And for a milk withdrawal time, it's even longer. So options, we want to use drenches. Moxidectin by injection, it needs to be for a specific reason, very specific. Talk to your vet about that. And essentially, there are no other options. So drugs not licensed in Canada, we should talk about this. We should be using products with a drug identification number. It's very easy now to purchase drugs over the internet, and a drug identification number ensures that the manufacturing process is proper, that you're actually getting what is on the package. I'd hate to see people buy some product off the internet and essentially what it is colored water. So look for that drug identification number. Compounding, should we be doing this? Again, this is for levamisole. It can only be done for that product, only through your veterinarian and only through a pharmacy. But the question with compounding, which always comes up, is how do we know that they're actually doing it correctly? On the other hand, some people don't have another option but to do this. So just keep that in mind. Own use importation. People are like, well, if I can't get it here, I'm going to bring it in from the US or somewhere else. I can understand to a certain extent people doing that. But what we know is that every other country that these products are available, so the US, Australia, New Zealand, they have all learned that just buying in a product or just getting in another dewormer does not get them any farther in the long run. They all have large amounts of anthelmintic resistance in those countries. So they all are promoting a sustainable parasite plan. So just keep that in mind. Just buying in and getting in a new dewormer is not going to be the cure-all. And again, I can't predict withdrawal times with out-of-country products. So now just going to the products. You can keep waving that, but I'm almost done.
Just reminded you.
So, ivermectin, here we have the Ivomec, okay? That's the product I'm talking about here. It has very good activity against all the gin we're concerned with. It has very good activity against those hypobiotic, those arrested L4 larvae. All this information is on page 21 of your handbook, so if I go through fast, you know where it is. But with the dose for sheep, 0.2 milligrams per kilogram, it's 1.5 times for goats. Again, this product doesn't work on tapeworms, and it does have some good activity against some of those external parasites, the sucking lice, not the chewing one, and the keds and the nose bots, so they all suck blood. So Moxidectin, So Moxidectin, which is Moxidectin. Again, this is the cattle formulation. Now we're going extra label. It does have very good activity against those gin and those L4s. Remember that Moxidectin and Ivomec are in the same class. They're in the same family. So if you get resistance to one, it won't be long before you have resistance to the other one. Again, this is a fat-loving dewormer, so it has long activity after it's injected. Again, with this one, this is the exception to your notes, in your notes. For sheep and goats, the injectable dose is the same, 0.2 milligrams per kilogram. Or if you can get the sheep drench, the sheep drench for Moxidectin, that's the one that's 0.4 milligrams per kilogram. Not that I'm recommending its use all the time, but just so you know. Again, doesn't work on tapeworms. Again, it has some good activity against some of those external parasites. But again, when I had someone call up to me and said they were using Moxidectin every 2 weeks to treat chewing lice, I had a little heart failure there, right? Because all you're doing is you're underdosing, you're dosing too frequently. I'm sure that farm will have anthelmintic resistance. They did it, I think, 6 or 7 times within every 2 weeks. So I had a little meltdown there. Fenbendazole. So this is our fenbendazole. This is Safeguard suspension, okay? This is the horse and cattle formulation. Again, I recommend using the drench, not the feed formulation, because again, just with feed antibiotics, you can't guarantee that every animal is getting the proper dose. Again, it has good activity against those 3 groups of parasites we're worried about. This is the one that works against, again, it has activity against those hibernating larvae. This is where the dose for goats is twice that of sheep. And also, this is the drug that if you suspect or that you think you're starting to go towards anthelmintic resistance, this is the drug where you would repeat the dose in 12 hours. You don't double the dose for sheep, so you give 5 milligrams per kilogram, and then you repeat that dose 12 hours later. That's so you maintain that concentration for a longer period of time. You don't give 10 milligrams at once, so you give 5 and 5, 12 hours apart. Similar for goats with the higher dose. This doesn't have activity against the external parasites. Yep.
If you were using, oh sorry, no, it's okay.
Okay.
I think it's out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So albendazole. Do we have this one? Oh yes. Albendazole is valbazin. Okay, valbazin. Again, we have the cattle drench formulation. Again, it's good against the gin and the L4s. The dosages are the same with fenbendazole because they're in the same family. It's good against liver flukes, but we don't have that problem here in southern Ontario. But this is the one where you have a huge warning with. You don't give valbendazole during the breeding season or in the first trimester because it can be toxic to the fetus. Levamisole. This is the compounded product. We used to have tramadol tablets. But again, they make it up as a drench. Again, it has good activity against the gin. This is the drug where we're not sure how much activity it has against those L4 hibernating larvae. Some people say it's good, some people says it's not so good. But this is the drug, and it's important that because it's compounded, that there's a very narrow difference between the effective dose and the toxic dose. So that's why you really want to make sure when you get it done, it's done correctly. And again, toxicity may be salivation, so muscle tremors, and a low heart rate. Those are signs of toxicity. Again, here are the doses. They're in your book. Okay, review questions. Sorry.
You can take 1 or 2.
Oh, I can take 1 or 2 questions.
Normectin and Ivermectin sheep drench are supposed to be the same.
What did you? Sorry, I didn't hear the first part.
Normectin,
yeah.
And Ivermectin sheep drench are the same.
Yeah, one's the generic version.
Have you noticed any resistance more with Normectin as compared to Ivermectin?
So the question was, Normectin and Ivomec, they're both ivermectin products. Ivomec was the first drug out, the patent is over, and so now you have Normectin. And the question was, do we see more resistance with Normectin than Ivomec? And I'm not really sure, and Andrew's shaking his head saying no. Right?
How effective are dewormers on hibernating monkeys?
So again, the question is, how effective are dewormers on the hibernating homunculus? They will work fairly well depending on what drug you choose. So if you go on that chart and you look for the one with the most pluses against L4 larvae, it'll work fairly well against those. Can I say it's going to knock every single one out? I can't say that. But some do have quite good activity against those L4, those hibernating ones. Oh, last question.
If you give Moxidectin sub-Q to use nursing lambs, will it go into the lambs?
Okay, so the question was, will Moxidectin injectable given to use go into the lambs, nursing lambs?
Yeah.
Okay, and so Moxidectin has huge withdrawal times. We're talking over 200 days. And so they will be getting low levels of Moxidectin in their milk.
Okay.
And that's not good, right? That's, again, underdosing to a certain extent.
Okay.
Oh, I have to go to the question, sorry. We're out of time. Okay, so my question is, dewormers used for sheep and goats are best given in what way or ways? By injection, by drenching, by pour-on, or all of the above? The correct answer is by drenching. Correct. So injection, there's one person again. We're only using Moxidectin by injectable, and not very many. That would not be my number one choice. Oops, I can't do that. True or false? Meat and milk withdrawal times for dewormers used in sheep and goats are the same as for cattle. True or false? The correct answer is false. They are not the same as cattle. They are much longer, or not necessarily much all the time, but they are longer. So dewormer dosages for goats are the same as sheep, excluding Moxidectin, before anybody decides to say anything there. There we go. We're a very intelligent group today. So thank you very much.